Hey everybody, welcome to Balkan Moto. Today we're going to be doing the PODS setup on the V-Star 1100. Let's check it out. Alright, so these are kind of the existing components from the airbox setup. We have the rubber boots that hook up to the carburetors directly, and these kind of sit upright. I believe this is the tall one in the front, and this is the short one. Oh no, this is the short one in the front, and this is the tall one in the back. And then the box kind of fits on top of them as such, right? Now we're gonna make do without this entire box. And as far as the air cleaner and filter on the side go, I think we're gonna repurpose that setup for the look of it, but also to store the oil catch can design that I'm gonna do. But before we get to that, let's deal with these first. So these, like I said, go on the carburetors. We're gonna actually reverse the order, so you can see kind of how one is taller. So if we put them this way, you can kind of clearly see how one is actually longer. So we're going to reverse the order so that the one that is in the back is the shorter one, and the one that's the longer one is in the front, because there's more space in the front. And on top of these, we're going to put these two, which are some aftermarket pod filters. Yeah. So these pod filters, we're going to mount essentially on top of them like this. Now, in terms of what kind of filter this is a Chinese knockoff from Amazon. It clearly is meant to look like a K&N filter, but honestly, when inspected, they are pretty good, if not almost identical to the K&N filters. These particular ones are they label them as 55 millimeters, so that's the distance inside here. They had a 50 millimeter and a 60 millimeter. Now, when I measured them, this is more of a 54, and you can kind of see there's a lip in here. So that lip is actually smaller than 54. And the groove here, that's the 55. In hindsight, I probably should have bought the 60 one, because with the 61, the outside diameter of this would have fit a lot nicer in here. Because right now it's kind of loose. So if we were to take this off and try to stick this guy in there, you can kind of see it's very loose. So if I were to just attach it like this, it's definitely going to come off. Now the inner diameter of this is very similar to the inner diameter of this outer loop here. So we're going to make use of that to attach these together more in a way that they don't move. So in order to attach them, what we're going to do is, you see this PVC piece of pipe. This is a 2-inch pipe. And again, this pipe is too small to fit in here and too big to fit in there, but good enough to fit in here. So what we're going to do is we're going to cut a piece about this long, maybe about 1 inch. And we're going to put electrical tape on it to make it thicker so that it fits in here. Then we're going to put electrical tape on the outside of this so that that fits nicely snug in here, and then we're going to tighten it from the outside. That way, if all the gaps are kind of eaten up by the electrical tape, and there's actually a stiff surface on the inside to really tighten this clamp so that this doesn't move and doesn't come off. Pretty straightforward. So let's take a look at the bike and see which one goes where, and measure out how much we need of this pipe, and then cut that piece off, so we can proceed with the setup. All right, and this is kind of a test fitment. So I put the longer one on the front, so this can go as high as possible. Really doesn't matter if it's as high as possible, but more so it matters that this one is as low as possible. So you can kind of see it's already pretty flush there, but because it's rubber, this can kind of flex a little. So that should be good. Looks wise, they look phenomenal. Nice and clean. No boxes here. I think the old box kind of went up to like about here. It filled out the gap. So I think we're certainly going to be able to fit them in there without a problem. Okay, so let's take a look at the PVC pipe and measure out how much we need in order to essentially insulate this little bit so that these things can get clamped together nicely. All right, we got the two spacers and that's how they fit. So right in there, so you can see how there's like some millimeters of difference. So what we're going to do is I'm going to put electrical tape on the outside of this, a few rounds, so that this fits nice and snug in here. And then we're going to put electrical tape on the outside of the rubber so that then this fits nice and snug on the boots on the bike. So let's tape these up and see how we're doing then. And this is how much electrical tape is needed to make these spacers just the right size. So this one being, as you can see, fairly loose. So fairly loose to this one being nice and snug. So let's do the same to this and then get these on the boots on the bike. Okay, and this is how it looks like when it's been taped up on the outside as well. So you can kind of see the big difference there. This one has a lip, this one has tape up to the lip and then over it. So when we do put it on, with this one, you see we have a lot of movement. With this one, that even grips, no movement. Perfect, so let's tape this one up, then attach them to the appropriate boot and put them on the bike. Okay, pod filters are on and tightened. So now the only movement is from the rubber itself, which is interesting because I think a lot of people were saying that with the pod filter setup, these shake and they hit here or they vibrate and you can hear it, but I don't know. We'll see if that's a problem. We can look into that at some other time. Okay, so then the next thing that's left is the blow-by. Now at this time, because I'm not assembling the full motor and all of its peripherals until I get the exhaust and the oil filter swapped out, we're only going to do a temporary setup, which will be part of the main setup later on. But for the time being, really all we're going to do is, instead of this just hanging out open like this, we're going to put a filter on the tip of it. Later on, what I plan on doing is behind the air box that's on this side, just to kind of cover up some of the carburetor setup and actually have the engine look a little bit nicer. We're going to still keep it, but inside of it, we're going to set up essentially this line will be split. Where we'll have a filter kind of at the top part of it and then a tube running down into a collection bottle for the rest of the actual oil, so that this thing can suck in fresh air but also expand any of that oil in there. So let's put that filter on there and wrap up. Okay, here's the blow-by filter for now. I'm just tucking it on the inside just to keep it out of the way, but for the later setup we're gonna look to attach it somehow so it's not just like moving like this. We'll probably end up attaching it to something. I don't know if this is a very stiff thing. Maybe we can attach it to that like this, or we'll see how the setup with the air box goes on that side. But for now, this is good enough for me. So there we go. That's your pod filter setup for the V-Star 1100. Okay guys, the pod filter setup is done. That will be it for this episode. Make sure to subscribe, hit the little bell for notifications when new videos become available. Check me out on Instagram at Balkan Moto 2018 and make sure to check out balkanmoto.com. Thanks for watching and see you next time.